Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann-Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you again today. And just to talk about something that I'm actually kind of surprised with myself that I haven't talked about this before because it's such a common thing that we all deal with in parenting, and that is comfort behaviors, whether it's thumb sucking or finger sucking or could be little sensory seeking behaviors that our kids do, or sleeping with a stuffy, or using a pacifier when they're younger, and all those things. Many, many, many kids have comfort behaviors. In fact, I have four children. Only one of them didn't have, a comfort seeking behavior like that. And I just want to talk about that today and obviously start us off with a confession. And my confession for this week is actually about my own comfort seeking behavior. When I was a kid, I sucked my thumb and I had a little blankie, and I sucked my thumb until I was 13 years old. So every time I have a client who's like, if you let your kid suck their thumb, they're going to need braces. I'm like, I sucked my thumb until I was 13 years old, never had braces. My don't look like a crazy person, and my teeth are relatively straight. Everything turned out okay. So it's not necessarily true that your kid sucking their thumb or using a pacifier or whatever is going to lead to them needing braces. Can happen, but it's not a foregone conclusion. So I always put that out there. And that blankie that I slept with, I took to college with me. I actually had it until my first kid was born, and I would still have it to this day if my husband hadn't accidentally left it behind when we were packing up from a vacation. And that was the end of that. That blankie. But I had it my whole life. It was very, very comforting. So there you go. Just full disclosure, you're taking parenting advice about comfort behaviors from somebody who definitely kept their comfort behaviors until very late in life, and that is me. Um, so let's talk about comfort behaviors. Um, the first thing I'll say is that, especially if it's something that has to do with, and your kiddo is young and it's something that has to do with their mouth, like sucking, pacifier, fingers, thumb, whatever, it's really important for you to know, and this is true for other comfort behaviors too, but I would say it's like doubly true for these like sucking kinds of behaviors. Like these behaviors are primal. They are wired into your child's like lizard brain. And so trying to break your kiddo of these habits is really, really tough. The other thing is, because these things are primal and super, super deep in the brain, trying to break your kid of these habits isn't just tough. It can wind up being really harmful and hurtful, and I would say borderline cruel to your kiddo, because they are doing something that is coming from like almost their autonomic nervous system, meaning it's out of their control and it's something that's automatic and baked in. And let's talk about how we grow out of those things. So if we're not going to break our kids of these habits, then what? Well, your child will grow out of these behaviors. Even me, the latent bloomer when it came to comfort behaviors. I did not, suck my thumb when I went to college and stuff like that. I grew out of it when I was ready. I made a decision. I remember distinctly because I was not a little kid. I was 13 years old when I was like, okay, 13 is too old to suck my thumb. I decided. And that was it. On my 13th birthday, I stopped sucking my thumb and I never did it again. I just decided because I was able to decide because I was old enough and mature enough and developed enough to actually have agency and control over that behavior. My parents, I can assure you, tried to break me of the habit of sucking my thumb for years and years and years unsuccessfully because I couldn't give it up. I just couldn't. Um, so think about, you know, what is it about this behavior that makes you want to give it up? So like I kind of made notes for today on like topics I wanted to cover when I'm, going through this podcast recording. And one of the things on my list is the question, why do you care? Why do you care that your kiddo is sensory seeking? Or why do you care that your kiddo is using this comfort behavior? And I'm going to talk in a minute about how those two words are connected, those two expressions. I'll tell you from my experience as a parent, and even more as a parent coach, the two primary reasons I see people caring about why their kid is and doing this and wishing they weren't doing it, trying to get them not to do it. One is the dental stuff. Dentists are really great at scaring us about what's going to happen if we let our kids, continue with this behavior. But two is we think it means something about us. If my child was fully, healthily attached to me, if my child was developing properly, if my child felt safe and loved and, grounded in the world, they wouldn't need this behavior. And so I want to take both of those things off of you today. I already did with the dentist thing. I'm sure there might be a dentist out there listening saying, no, it's really, really bad. So here's the counter or maybe like an additional perspective to look at this stuff through the dental lens is instead of considering, well, does it cause dental problems? Does it not cause dental problems? I'm sure there's arguments to be made in both directions. Let's look at the feasibility or even like reality of trying to break a kid from this habit. Even if it's true that sucking your thumb causes dental problems, so what? Just because it causes dental problems doesn't mean we have any hope of changing this behavior with our child without harming them. And at a certain point, we have to make the decision like, which quote unquote harm am I going to choose? The dental harm, so to speak, or the psychological harm? So at a certain point, the argument is moot, even if it's true categorically that if you let your child persist in these comfort behaviors, they're going to need orthodonture later. If that's true, even then, we still can't do a whole lot about it. So that's a bummer, but here we are. And like I said before, I would posit that it's not a foregone conclusion that your kid is going to have dental problems because they suck their thumb or whatever. So that's the number one reason that I hear. But usually underlying that is the worry that it means something about my self as a parent. It means something about my parenting. It means something about the childhood that my kid is experiencing. And there are arguments to be made in that arena for sure. Also, thumb sucking is something that is built in to your child's brain. Like we said before, it's so primal, not necessarily thumb sucking, but sucking in general. It does not mean anything bad about you as a human that your child was born into this world with wiring that led them to feel soothed and comforted by sucking. And once they have allowed that, that comfort to happen, which happens like day one that they're born, by the way. So I'm not sure if the word allow is even appropriate here, right? Like that comfort loop is reinforced. So there are a million and one reasons why your kiddo might be using these comfort behaviors or sensory seeking behaviors. And you telling yourself that it's a sign that you are a crappy parent says more about your proclivity to believe that you're a crappy parent than what actually is going on, if that makes sense. Like when I have a client who tells me, oh my gosh, my kid is sucking their thumb and, I must have done something wrong or I must have missed something or, not given them something they needed. And that's why what I know about that actual situation isn't that their kid isn't getting what they need, but their parent is convinced that whatever their kid is going through, it's a sign of their failure as a parent. And that's what we really need to work on. So really ask yourself, like, why do I really even care about this? Can I get to a place in my mind where it is what it is and it won't always be this way? And this will kind of organically change over time when the timing is right. Are you able to tap into that? And if you are, great. Do turn off the podcast right now if you want to. Um, so now let's talk about that sensory seeking that I talked about before. Lots and lots of kids have sensory seeking behaviors, and not all of them are these primal mouth behaviors, although that does happen. Like we see kids, like school age kids, who are like chewing on their shirts. I had two kids who used to come home from school, and like the collar around their shirt would just be this like big ring of disgusting chewed upness. And that happened maybe for like a month or two, the beginning of the school year, 1 or 2 years kind of thing. So transition time, and that was a comforting behavior they had. But there's lots and lots of other sensory seeking behaviors. I'll tell you, like one of my kids, his sensory seeking behavior is that he loves to pinch the skin of my elbows, or not just mine, anybody's elbows, any willing elbow victim. He just finds something really soothing and satisfying about, you know, that like tactile feeling that he has. So sensory seeking behaviors are really common and normal. There's a myriad of reasons why kids do them. I'm not going to go into them too deeply because I'm not an occupational therapist, and so I probably will be saying things that are either incomplete at best and possibly even totally flat out wrong at worst. So we're not going to go there too deeply, but just to say that if your kiddo is sensory seeking, that is a comfort behavior. It's something that's soothing to them, and allowing them to do that, while you might, if it's problematic, work with an OT, for example, and figure out like how to help that child grow. So when we talk about like, well, we're helpless to stop this situation, that doesn't mean that we're helpless to do anything about it. If it is a situation that you feel really strongly, if you've gone through the whole why do I care stuff, and there's still some lingering stuff that feels really valid and legitimate to you about why you want to address this behavior, there are things we can do as parents to help our children, grow out of these behaviors sooner. And working with an occupational therapist is probably the very first thing that I would suggest for you to do. Actually, I'll say that differently. It's the second thing I would suggest for you to do. The first thing is to release any hope of disciplining this out of your child. And the reason why that's the first thing you should do is because the more we try to push our kids to give up things before they're ready, the more tightly they cling to those things, because the very experience of being pushed to give up this comfort behavior increases the feeling of needing the comfort behavior, of needing to soothe yourself. It's stressful, right? It's stressful if this thing that is your sort of lifeline to sanity and safety is threatened. Of course, you're going to feel stressed, and then you're going to want to use that thing that keeps you calm and helps you feel grounded even more. So the more you can, release that, actually, the more easy it will be for your child to naturally grow out of this behavior. So then step 2 would be to, talk to an occupational therapist and see like, well, what can we do to maybe help my child integrate some of these infant reflexes and get to their nervous system to a place where they actually feel what their brain already knows and what our brains already know, which is that these behaviors aren't necessary anymore. The child doesn't know that. They don't know that in their body. And that's why their body is still doing these things that aren't necessary anymore, because in their body, those behaviors do feel necessary. Okay. So let's talk about what we can do as parents around comfort seeking behaviors or sensory seeking behaviors. And I'm going to really focus in more on the comfort side of this for the rest of the podcast. I'm not going to go back to the sensory stuff because, like I said, that's the arena of a different professional than me. But while we can't stop our kids, okay, so now this is the other piece. Like, let's look at this from the disciplinary lens. Like, let's say your child is sucking their thumb and you decide that you want them to stop, and you decide that you're going to make them, right? Like, you are going to discipline them out of thumb sucking. Well, there's some things you can do. You can get those, like the stuff that it looks like nail polish, but it makes it tastes bad, which, by the way, every child will just lick off, myself included. That happened to me when my parents tried that with me. Didn't work. You can try that kind of thing. You can take their hand out of their mouth every time you see them sucking it. That was another thing that happened to me. You can tell them, that there's going to be some sort of consequence or punishment if they suck their thumb. But the bottom line is a lot of thumb sucking, a lot of comfort seeking behaviors. Those behaviors happen behind closed doors, right? Those behaviors happen in the nighttime when your kiddo is putting themselves to sleep or soothing themselves to sleep, or when they're alone and they're trying to comfort themselves because maybe they feel lonely, when they are away from you. So the real truth is, when we tell our kids, you're forbidden to suck your thumb anymore, we are doing something that in love and logic is like totally against the rules, which is we are making a boundary we can't enforce. And instead, what we should be doing is looking at, well, what do I have the ability to enforce? What's a boundary I can enforce? And in love and logic, they call those enforceable statements. You could make a boundary in your family that thumb sucking is for bedroom time. So if I see you sucking your thumb, that means that I know that you need a little time by yourself in your room. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you just need to calm yourself down or whatever. And that's cool. That happens in your bedroom. So when I see you sucking your thumb, I might say, oh, looks like you need a little time to yourself. No worries. Go ahead and be in your room. I might actually carry you to your room if you're little. And I'll see you when you feel more calm and ready to be out, about in the house without sucking your thumb. That's something I could do if I wanted to. Once again, you have to come back to that, like, why do I care? Do I actually want to set this boundary? But that's a boundary you could set. Or for me, I remember when I was a kid, this was actually a good example of some solid parenting on my parents' part. They said, your blankie has to stay in your bedroom. So I wasn't allowed to just like drag it around the house or take it to school or, have it in the car and stuff like that. It was for my bedroom. And I do remember many times where, life was upsetting and I would go in my bedroom and suck my thumb and hold my blankie. And that's how I felt calmer and safer. And I was able to follow that rule because my parents were able to enforce that rule, right? That's an enforceable statement. Now, by the way, I'm not spending a whole lot of time on how we word enforceable statements, but there's a lot of wordsmithing that goes into enforceable statements. So you wouldn't say you're not allowed to bring your blankie out of your room. You would say you're welcome to have your blankie in your bedroom. Or I wouldn't say, you're not allowed to suck your thumb outside of your room. I might say, thumb sucking is for your bedroom, or that's something that's for bedroom time. So think about like where we do have power, and if you feel really strongly that this is something that you want to either facilitate along, so this like maturation process happens a little bit more smoothly and more quickly, or for some reason it feels really important to you to help your child learn like what behaviors are appropriate for what location and all of that stuff. Yes, absolutely. Work with an OT, set some boundaries in your home, but really focus in on what actually is possible here and what is respectful and kind and compassionate and humane to this kiddo. Because what's way, way, way more important than getting your child not to do this behavior anymore is to understand like what's going on internally for your kiddo, and to respect the fact that right now for whatever reason, the world feels kind of topsy-turvy. And this is what my child has come up with that helps that feel a little bit less wonky. That's huge. This is what we want our kids to do, actually. We want our children to learn how to self-soothe. And it's not really cool for us to put them in situations where they need to level up that are age appropriate, and that's all good. And then when they do, and they find their own way to level up and handle things, we judge it and say it's not okay. Why isn't it okay? You know what? Maybe this isn't the way you help yourself feel better and calmer in a crazy world, but this is the way that your kiddo does. Like, this is why my kid came home like chewing his shirt at the beginning, like maybe first couple of weeks of school when he was young. I was able to say, yeah, well, the world is very topsy-turvy for this kid right now. He's spending all day in a place he's never been before with people he's never known before, following directions that are all new to him. Like, it makes perfect sense that he's like added a layer into his repertoire of how to make himself feel less freaked out. And I can do a lot as a mom to recognize that my child's feeling a little more freaked out than usual, love him extra, give him lots of space and time with that, be with him in his discomfort, and help him feel more grounded, because that is also part of this maturation process. Being with our kids while they navigate hard stuff, not judging how they navigate hard stuff, not doing it for them, right? So I didn't see my kid's chewed up shirt and say, oh, we have to change schools, or I should homeschool him, or whatever. I just can recognize, like, okay, yeah, this is a transition time. That makes sense. I'm with you through that transition. I'm not rescuing you from that transition. I'm also not ripping away the things that would make this transition more doable for you. So I hope that's helpful for you today. So much stuff that we could, little rabbit holes we could go down around comfort seeking behavior. But I hope this kind of helps you maybe just feel a little bit more calm and relaxed around whatever comfort behaviors your child might have. Feel like you have a little bit more agency and direction, but also a little bit more settling into the process. I can't wait to talk to you again next week. If all of this stuff feels helpful for you and you really would love to get my take on your child's specific comfort behavior or any other parenting topic, don't forget that you always have a free consultation waiting for you with me. If we've never met before, set up a free discovery call. The link is in the show notes, and I can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.